typically we are, as a minority group in certain areas, marginalized in those futures. So everyone in this room, if you don't know, you do know today, I'm like so unapologetically black, I'm focused on black. What is the impact on black? So, give me your perspective.
So, that's a great question, Ibrahim. How about that?
They're looking for great answers.
So, as a futurist, good news is that we don't predict the future. Secondly, we are really focused, particularly at the Institute for the Future, of working with all leaders across the board to enable every one of us to be able to have some clarity on the future.
Right.
And what's important about getting clarity on the future is looking at some of the signals of changes in behaviors, changes or new things that are happening. And I'll give you just one real quick example that was really exciting that we just saw during these innovation pitches. All of them had an aspect of impact. Bodify, clearly, impact around sustainability. Story I, the winner, okay? An impact around bringing people together around stories. So those are all really important signals. And what we tried to do in our research and our book, Office Shock, was to kind of apply that to what everybody is talking about these days. Do we go back to the office 3 days a week or 4 days a week? All of you technology leaders asking the question, is our technology stack fit for purpose? And we applied what we call future-back thinking to this question about the office, and we revealed that, sure, the questions about when do we work and where do we work, those are important. The questions about sustainability, yeah, those are also really important. But there are 5 other questions that are fundamental in helping any community prepare for the future. And the future is uncertain. But we need to be ready for whatever futures, whatever scenarios are going to play out.
Understood. So what I'll say, getting back to the black question, which you did answer those points, but no, because there is a future, right? And the reason I'm very intentional about black is that we want to make sure that as we look at those futures, that the black experience is something where we're thriving. Earlier today, Damani shared, no better time to be black. I have that conversation with him during our one-on-ones periodically. And we're seeing changes and we're seeing shifts and things are ebbing and flowing. For us, and we talked about this in the book, right? There's that space around belonging, right? So I think we have a visual to show on belonging.
We do have a visual about belonging.
Okay. And is it up? Or are we responsible for the clicker?
All right.
Okay.
It's okay. It's not coming.
But either way, so a lot of you took the survey early on, and we were able to get some data and some metrics. But when we think about that space of belonging, you know me, I'm selfish. This is an area that I'm really passionate about, making sure that we create these inclusive environments where everyone can thrive. What are some of the learnings that came out of the research, primary research, secondary research, experiences that you've had that contributed to the book?
So a couple of really important elements. So you actually, you can see, I believe, well, we see it, but...
It's on the screen.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry about that. So when we did our research, we asked 7 questions. And this is question number 4 out of the 7. The first one is about purpose. The second one is outcomes, which we're going to talk about next. The third is climate. The fourth is about belonging. The 5th is augmentation, okay, AI. The 6th is place and time. So where and when do we work? And then the last one, which we will also talk about in the time we have today, is about agility. So if we take a look at the feedback that we got from, I think there was about 34 participants. So I want to thank everyone for taking this very unscientific survey. You can already see that within a community that on the surface seems relatively homogeneous, if I may say, again, superficial reading, you can already see that there is a bit of a gap between what people want to have for belonging. That many of you are kind of in the middle. You want to have that familiarity, but you also, some of you are willing to look out and reach out to be different. And I think for the Black community, this is going to be, again, as an outsider, it is going to be a challenge. And I'm speaking as an outsider, as a member of the Jewish community, as a member of the Pittsburgh community, if there are any Pittsburghers out there. Yeah. And I've spent most of my professional life outside of Pittsburgh, unfortunately. And I live in Switzerland, so I've got a different perspective as well. And what I see here is that a conversation should happen. And the conversation about what is the right balance between working within the community and embracing others outside of the community. And as we move forward in the future, yes, this is a great time to be Black because there is a lot more activity happening. There is a lot more awareness happening. And I do believe that what I've heard, certainly today, is that this is a very passionate community. It's a very empowered community, particularly when we just heard conversations about how to really move from mentorship and the strong networks into sponsorship. And we had that conversation just a couple of minutes ago. So this is a really good indicator that a real honest conversation should happen about your topic of expertise, about belonging, and how do you leverage the belonging that is so much an integral part of this community to move forward and strengthen all communities to co-create better futures.
Absolutely, and you and I, we've talked about this. I mean, for us, it's really important to ensure that, yes, diversity is easy because that's people, right? And those are human beings. And when you look at the diversity where there are so many attributes, whether it's a social identifier that has to do with your race, your religion, your abilities, body size, age demographic, neurodiversity, the list goes on. So we get that. The diversity piece is not as complicated as it sometimes may seem. And then the inclusive piece is really where we start to see some of the friction because now you have communities and then you've got your multi-hyphenated communities, right? We talked about some of our Afro-Latina brother and sisters and where do they sit? What happens when you are a part of, let's say, the Black community and as well as a part of LGBTQ plus QIA plus, and what does that mean? Are there decisions that have to be made, and how those things work? And that's where things get real muddy in trying to make that transition. And then we talk about after you're able to evolve and get beyond some of those artificial barriers. That's really what they are, mental models. We then talk about culture, right? And we create that sense of belonging in the culture where people feel they can thrive, where they feel worthy, they feel that there's trust in the environment, the psychological safety, et cetera. As the demographic, and I'll go from a US perspective, as the demographic of majority changes, right? And I think we had the estimate of 2045 where we actually see that what's majority today no longer, it's below the 50% ratio that's there today. What are the positive things that you see coming out of that? Like, Afrofuturisms are there. You've got stuff around Black feminism that's there. Just share some perspective on what you found in the research.
So, again, a great signal, what you just cited, 2045, there will be parity. Okay? I think many of us probably hope that it happens sooner, and hopefully it will. And that's really going to be dependent on us. Okay? To be able to move that agenda forward. Right. And we were, in the book, very inspired by Afrofuturism, as you mentioned. I think we heard that there were a lot of Marvel fans in the room. Okay, so a good example of Afrofuturism is Black Panther. Thank you. And what's really powerful about Afrofuturism, in the example of Black Panther, and others. Octavia Butler also is a well-known science fiction writer. And that's why I was really happy that we had the Story AI be the winner. Really important, and futurists have talked about this for years. Communities that have an image of the future are much more motivated to make that future a reality in the present. Okay? Very important. Fred Pollock was one of the original futurists that was from Belgium, Jewish. He was hidden during the war. And when he came out of that, that was his insight, that if we don't have an image of the future, then societies will fall apart. And again, speaking a bit from the outside, in the United States, you can already see the polarization that's happening. Right? Is there a shared vision of a positive future? That, I think, is something that particularly the Black community can significantly contribute to. And in the book, we brought in artists and Octavia Butler, a few quotes, and others to be able to point out how powerful those images, those stories of the future that bring to life social justice, that bring to life economic equality, that bring to life climate-positive consumption and production behaviors. That gives us that shared story that ideally will motivate us to make some of the difficult choices about changing behaviors. And that's why I really like particularly Bodify. So the Bodify example is a great signal that there are leaders who want to actually change consumption and production behaviors. And that's what we need more of. But in order to get there, we need to have that image of the future.
Absolutely, and the image of the future, and you and I agree with this, that we see that there needs to be a lot more camaraderie, right? And that camaraderie comes through allyship across social identities. Right?
It does, and I think it's important to unpack the importance of camaraderie. And I'm a trained architect, and I teach design, and my mother, for any of you who have kids under the age of probably 6 or 8, she's a well-known arts and crafts book author for kids. And the reason I go back to that and emphasize the creativity is that it's only when we co-create, we actually build things together, that we get that allyship, that we really build what is known as a cognitive bias called the IKEA effect. Okay? And for those of you who have built any IKEA furniture, you probably have some memory related to IKEA. For either the kids were jumping on your back, or your significant other was saying, "Why don't we just get somebody else to build this?" You got some memory connected to it. So the power of co-creating and building things together. That's why entrepreneurialism is so important, because you're really building things. And again, all of the technology that is in this room, you've had to roll up your sleeves and actually build something. That's why technologists, I think, have an advantage of other functions. I won't mention the other functions, but there is an advantage because we all know how to build things. And that's a very different way of interacting with people and crossing some of those gender biases, those race biases, overcoming even collective trauma to really get together and make something happen. So.
Absolutely, and I mean, you bring up a really great point. I think Hans mentioned it earlier where when on the stage, he was saying actually technology has helped to level the playing field. And so when you look at all of the Black technologists that are excellent in their field, leading teams, et cetera, they can be the same entrepreneurs that were just up here pitching solutions.
Right.
And if you look at that, they're actually producing outcomes, right? So let's segue into outcomes and that particular lever from the book.
Yeah, so our second spectrum, if we go to the next slide, is all about outcomes. And when we talk about outcomes in the book, it was actually one of the more controversial chapters because we asked the question about the office. Are we focusing our collaboration, our ways of working, what we call in the book officing, okay, going from a noun to a verb, what are the outcomes that we're expecting? And this was controversial because we said on one end there's profit, and on the other end there's prosperity. And to be very, very concrete about this, prosperity is very much what we heard Jermaine say, giving back to the community. And I think again, was just a great example of providing the sponsorship to the community. And I'm really pleased to see that in this 31 participants that answered this question, that there is more of a weight towards prosperity. Now, this is a journey. I was last night walking through Rockefeller Center and had the opportunity to get a private tour of the mural in the lobby and discovered that Diego Rivera, the husband of Frida Kahlo, his original painting was on the one side capitalism, on the other side communism. Right? So you could imagine the Rockefellers, when they saw that, they said, no. So they actually changed it and brought another artist. To point out that this prosperity, profit is going to be important. We heard, I think it was Clarence, who said about the importance of it's not the skin color, it's green.
Yeah,
okay?
Everyone's color is green.
Okay, and it's critical. And what I am really excited about seeing here is how might this community contribute to profit with purpose? Okay, profit with purpose. And that is a bit of a buzzword. The reality is that there is a signal actually in New York. How many of you have taken a ride share while you're in the city? Lyft, you use Lyft, Uber, couple. How many of you used Co-op Ride? Co-op Ride, yeah?
Once.
Okay, so don't tell us the experience. I would love everyone to try that because again, that's a signal. It's a ride-sharing platform that is a cooperative, okay? So the drivers are actually owners of the business. And I do believe that for us to create a better future, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, which are our current business models that are primarily focused on profit. Because that drives incentives, that drives investments, that drives hiring. And again, it is important. It is important, particularly in an American context. But for us to create a better future for ourselves and the next generation, we've got to be thinking differently about how we distribute wealth. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you speak about the U.S. specifically. I mean, we're a capitalistic society,
yep.
Right? And that's what makes us a global power. That's what has the U.S. dollar strong right now. Some people may not be happy about that, but I am. You're talking about how we have to strike this balance. How does that actually impact the workplace? How does that impact the office today? What changes should we be looking at from a people perspective? Think about the leaders in this room and what they need to take back to their organization in anticipation of change.
Yeah, so number one, their capitalist model has accomplished an incredible impact in the world. Okay, it has created incredible wealth. So there's no critique about that. The question is, what do we do next? Because there has been a downside of that. And the easiest example of that is the economic inequality, which has exacerbated social inequality. Plus, the planet has suffered. To your question, what can we be considering as actions or choices in the workplace? Well, number one is an importance of having voice in decision-making. Now, some of us may say that that's going to really complicate decision-making. However, as we just saw here, we were all able to vote. And as technologies improve, being able to coordinate voice, we don't even need to use the word vote, but coordinate voice, and to be able to give everyone a voice, that's making organizations truly democratic. Now that does put into question hierarchy, that does put into question governance. So those are evolving. If you take the example of Patagonia, okay, that has become the poster child for significantly changing the profit model of a company. Now it's easier to do that when it's family owned. I'm currently working with a family-owned business in Europe. They are creating a corporate campus, and they are really focusing on getting everyone's voice in shaping not only the campus, but also the new products and services, the market that they go to. And when we're going to talk about agility in a minute, the power of agility is that teams on the ground are able to make decisions. And I think to move towards prosperity, to change the kinds of outcomes, to redistribute decision-making, to redistribute wealth, it's very important to give voice. The second component does come down to compensation. And compensation is connected with consumption. The question of how much is enough, particularly in American context, and again, I'll play my American card now, it is a challenge for us to look at each other in the eye to say, well, maybe it's enough. Because of the competitive nature of the culture here, there is a drive to always have more. And in Europe, it is more balanced. And again, there's no paradise on earth. Okay? But I do think that as we go into the future, we do need to all ask ourselves, what is enough? And the power of the Black community is that you have a sense of family. Okay? And I love the joke. I think you had made the joke. We don't like to talk about money because we think our family member is going to ask for some. Okay? Trust me, same thing happens. When we have our Passover service or our high holidays. Okay, we get together and okay, we got to give some money to the synagogue, but then somebody's going to ask. But the power of the family is also it's always to help you maintain that balance and to be reminded about what's important. And I do think that in organizations, and again, leaders, being able to have that conversation, yes, the money's important, but how much is enough? Is it enough? And what might we do with the other 10%? And how might we move closer to that prosperity, okay, by increasing the investments? And again, what I heard in the last hour demonstrated that quite strongly. So again, I think there's what we call in the book, a great opportunity for the Black community to actually move the needle, particularly on this spectrum of choice.
So for those who haven't read Off a Shock yet, just describe the great opportunity a bit based on how it's written in the book.
So the book was written during COVID pandemic, and I believe many of you, I had lunch with a couple of people, Paul, Cynthia, Morgan, Darren, and I asked them the question, so are you enjoying being at work 2 days a week and home 3 days a week, or 3 days a week, or 2 days a week? And Cynthia said, I love having bookends. Okay? Monday and Friday. She really likes that. And I was really pleased to hear that, because that is an important question, and a lot of people are asking that. However, there are some organizations that are now mandating you got to be in the office. And reason that we wrote the book was to say, okay, that's an important question, no doubt. Okay, I'm a family person. I really enjoyed being at home the last couple of years. I don't know if my significant others have enjoyed it as much, but I have. The reason we wrote the book was to say, hey, this is a great opportunity, because now everybody's asking the question, why do we need to be in the office at all? I'm comfortable at home. For those of us who have the luxury of having a home office, okay, and that's not the case for everyone. Nice to have options, hybrid, what's called. So we said, hey, this is a great opportunity, because everyone's asking, do we need to go back to the office? To ask the questions, why are we working? What's our purpose? Okay? What are the outcomes? How am I benefiting where I am in the organization if I'm not one of those top earning leaders? How is my community benefiting? If my community is only taking and not giving back? How are we contributing to the climate crisis? How might we use technology, AI specifically? And fortunately, we checked the box as futurists. We included ChatGPT 3 in the book, so we're okay there.
It wrote part of the book.
Right, but the question there is, okay, how might we use technology and AI, particularly to augment our intelligence?
Well, let me jump in, because this came up over dinner last night about remote work. What's the right balance of in office, out of office? And then, of course, me, I'm looking at the human element of it. What do careers look like at this point? Because path to promotion, and Greg Morrison was here several years ago, and he said, look, merit gets you so far. It's about your likability score.
Right.
Right? And so remote, and I'm not saying that you can't get likability virtually and that people haven't been promoted who have never met their teams. I'm sure these things are happening.
Right.
But just if you can just give some thought about what the future looks like, whatever it is, if it's full remote, hybrid, back to the office, what are the strategic advantages of still being able to have that human-to-human interaction, as well as getting promoted so that we avoid some of this proximity bias that kicks in from being remote?
All right, so I'll pick out 3 of the questions as usual, Ibrahim.
I start getting passionate about it.
It's rich. It's rich. I think the easy one, I'll pick up on the last one first. My view is that we will always, as social animals, need social interaction. Okay? We are hardwired for interacting with other people. And that's why the belonging spectrum is interesting, because we are hardwired to interact with people who are familiar to us. Okay? That's how we survived, out in the savannah for millennia. So we're hardwired. The amygdala is always going to have a fight or flight. When